Hey everyone, it's Andrew Meet Rich, and today we're diving deep into some truly unsettling global developments, from high-stakes political accusations at the UN to the grim realities unfolding across Europe. There's a lot to unpack. We're talking about everything from bold statements by former US presidents to the shifting geopolitical landscape and what it means for all of us. I used to work inside a big, well-known media outlet, and I saw firsthand how narratives were twisted to fit certain agendas, so I walked away. Now I'm independent, I speak freely, and I tell you what really matters, connecting the facts, the context, and the consequences. If you find this kind of unfiltered analysis valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and consider becoming a sponsor. Your support helps keep this platform truly independent and dedicated to uncovering the bigger picture. First up, we have Donald Trump, who in a nearly hour-long address from the UN General Assembly podium declared that the peace he achieved during his initial term as president has crumbled, giving way to unprecedented crises. Interestingly, he started his UN speech with a non-functioning teleprompter. He openly stated, "I'm not against giving this speech without a teleprompter. I can only say that whoever is operating this teleprompter is in a lot of trouble." The key takeaways from his remarks were sharp. He suggested that the US spent 4 years weakened by what he called radicalism under the Biden administration, yet he also claimed the country currently has no global competitors. The former president then accused the UN of inaction during international conflicts, asserting that he received no assistance from the organization in resolving what he termed endless wars. He argued that the UN possesses immense potential, but fails to even come close to realizing it, especially when it comes to conflict resolution. Trump even questioned whether the UN could truly play a leading role on the world stage. He stated he came to the UN to extend the hand of American leadership to those willing to join the US in building a more secure world, while also criticizing the UN for what he labeled as irrational spending. Now, on to some incredibly contentious points. Donald Trump asserted that recognizing a Palestinian state would only fuel the conflict and essentially be a gift to Hamas for their violent acts. He also claimed to be working tirelessly to end the Ukrainian conflict, notably mentioning his good relationship with Vladimir Putin. He attributed the start of the conflict in Ukraine to what he saw as errors in US leadership. Shifting gears, Trump declared that the United States is ready to impose new tariffs against Russia and its partners, but only if European countries adopt similar measures. He reiterated his long-standing call for Europe to cease all purchases of oil and gas from Russia. They cannot do what they are doing, he insisted. They buy oil and gas from Russia while they themselves are at war with Russia. He emphasized that if Russia isn't prepared to negotiate a resolution to the conflict, then the US is fully prepared to impose very harsh tariffs, which I believe will stop the bloodshed very quickly. However, for these tariffs to be effective, he stressed, European countries, all of you gathered here right now, would have to join us in taking exactly the same measures. Speaking from the UN General Assembly podium, the former US president controversially named China and India as the primary financial supporters of the Ukrainian conflict due to their economic cooperation with Russia. He also stated that the US is ready to provide any country with affordable energy resources, but insisted that trade must be fair and reciprocal. In a truly striking moment, Donald Trump dismissed green energy as a hoax and the greatest fraud. It was quite something to watch, as directly behind him on the podium sat Annalena Baerbock, Germany's foreign minister and president of the General Assembly, who has built her entire political career within the Green Party. Trump lamented, "This is no longer the Europe I knew and loved. You are bringing trouble upon yourselves when you fight what is supposedly global warming. That is why we withdrew from the fraudulent Paris Agreement." He urged Europe to take control of migration and abandon green energy, warning of catastrophe otherwise. He went as far as to call the concept of a carbon footprint a fabrication by people with bad intentions. "Europe is hurtling towards a very difficult situation," he declared. "It's time to end the experiment with open borders." He then cited alarming statistics, stating that approximately 50% of convicted individuals in German prisons are foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, that figure rises to 53%, in Greece 54%, and in supposedly beautiful Switzerland, a staggering 72% of people in prisons are not from Switzerland. He also sharply criticized London's mayor, remarking, "London has a terrible mayor. The city has changed so much. They want to introduce Sharia law. Your countries are simply being destroyed. Europe has huge problems. Europe is being invaded by irregular migrants on a scale never seen before. These are certainly provocative statements designed to stir strong reactions. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, in an interview with Fox News on September 23rd, asserted that the conflict in Ukraine is far from over. He also expressed his conviction that Europe will very soon withdraw its support for Kyiv. "I don't think the war will end soon. Yes, this is bad news, and we are grieved by it," Erdoğan responded when asked about the conflict's conclusion. The president further stated that Ukraine cannot compete economically with Russia, adding, "It is unlikely that Europe will provide financial assistance to Ukraine forever. They are already stopping, and Ukraine is having a hard time. I hope they will continue to support Ukraine, but I cannot estimate how long this will last." He also voiced hope that the tense relations with NATO countries and Russia could be resolved through peaceful means. Erdoğan also addressed whether he considers Hamas a violent organization. "About 20 years ago, I traveled across the US where I was asked this question, and then I replied that I do not consider Hamas a violent organization. On the contrary, in my opinion, Hamas is a resistance movement." He claimed, "Hamas essentially has no weaponry or significant capabilities, and now they are using the little they have in attempts to protect themselves in this resistance." This perspective is, of course, highly controversial and clashes significantly with the views of many Western nations. Erdoğan urged NATO to build its relationships with Russia based on Turkey's model, which maintains good relations with both Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. In his view, NATO should follow principles of diplomatic engagement with both sides to achieve de-escalation. Speaking of diplomatic engagement, Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock sharply criticized Israel's actions in Gaza and called for negotiations to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict based on a two-state solution. "Throughout Gaza, people are experiencing a devastating situation on the ground," the minister was quoted as saying by Der Spiegel. "This long-standing conflict cannot be resolved through violent acts, destruction, and loss of life," she emphasized during a visit to New York. Baerbock told journalists that the Israeli offensive operation in Gaza is a completely misguided path. She also criticized Israel's actions on the West Bank, stating, "Any steps towards illegal annexation of occupied territories undermine the chances for a long-term resolution of the conflict." Despite Germany's criticism of Israel's actions, German authorities have repeatedly stressed that, unlike some of their partners, they currently do not intend to recognize a Palestinian state. However, a significant warning has emerged. If Germany supplies Israel with weaponry used in Gaza, it could face accusations of complicity in systematic oppression. This stark statement came from Christoph Heusgen, the former head of the Munich Security Conference and former permanent representative of Germany to the UN, in a recent interview with Berliner Zeitung. Heusgen, who once advised Angela Merkel when she declared Israel's security a matter of state importance, also harshly criticized the current Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is fighting because he wants to stay in power longer, and in general, he has never advocated for a two-state solution, and no concessions should be expected from him. Heusgen's proposed solution is that Germany should finally recognize Palestine as an independent state, thereby influencing Israel. Or he suggests Netanyahu could be removed from power. Now that's a new twist. If you're finding this deep dive valuable, please make sure you've hit that subscribe button and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Moving to the military front, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius stated that repeated violations of NATO airspace by Russia constitute a deliberate provocation. In an interview with Handelsblatt published on Tuesday, September 23rd, he stressed the need for restraint in response to Moscow's actions. According to Pistorius, Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to simultaneously distract from EU sanctions and the situation in Donbass, and to provoke the West. The calculation here is this. First, provoke NATO, and in case of escalation, feign surprise and discredit the alliance, the minister said. He believes that the Kremlin underestimated how coordinated, restrained, and decisive NATO has been. Pistorius noted that Germany almost annually allocates contingents for air policing missions in the Baltic states and Romania. He highlighted the alliance's vigilance when, on Friday, September 19th, German Eurofighter jets were promptly scrambled after 3 Russian aircraft violated Estonian airspace. Our pilots are excellently trained and have a wide range of measures for such incidents. They will repel any threat to our NATO partners if the situation demands it, and most importantly, they behave professionally and do not succumb to provocations, the defense minister emphasized. The Berliner Zeitung published a report on a visit to the Lithuanian Bundeswehr brigade, where Germany's armed forces will permanently station a tank brigade on NATO's eastern flank. The Lithuanian project is the brainchild of Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. As author Nicholas Butelin writes, German soldiers are caught between daily life in Vilnius and the threat of a major conflict. We have a crystal clear mission. We are ready to defend against any aggressor, the brigade command told the German correspondent. The report painted a rather striking picture. Picturesque low hills, dense fog somewhere between Vilnius and Kaunas, Lithuania's two largest cities. Visibility on this early Baltic morning was poor. Rapeseed fields stretched to the horizon on both sides. The country road was extremely narrow, and suddenly, around a bend, 4 or 5 armored vehicles appeared, driving through stubble fields. A line of steel and camouflage. Soldiers in the vehicles intently observed passing cars. No signs of activity. Was this military equipment part of everyday life in Lithuania? Belarus is just a few kilometers away, and the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad is not much further. Very recently, literally a stone's throw from here, major Russian-Belarusian military exercises Zapad took place. Welcome to NATO's eastern flank, the article's author writes. Russia is testing European borders, stated Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas at an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. She asserted that Russia once again violated international law and the sovereignty of a European country the previous week. For 12 minutes, 3 armed Russian fighter jets brazenly violated Estonian airspace. These were the same type of fighter jets, she claimed, that regularly target civilians in Kiev. Kallas described the recent violation of Estonian airspace as unprecedented both in scale and recklessness. This was a deliberate provocation that could have ended with dire consequences. This incident, she noted, followed weeks earlier violations of Polish and Romanian airspace by Russian drones. It cannot be that Russia accidentally violated European airspace 3 times in 2 weeks. Russia is testing European borders, testing our resolve, undermining the security of all of Europe. Russia will continue to provoke as long as we allow it, Kallas continued, essentially Estonianizing European foreign policy, a term that has actually been used by others. Earlier, according to media reports, the Trump administration had expressed concern over what it perceived as the excessive aggressiveness of the Baltic states towards Russia. U.S. administration officials criticized this Estonianization of European foreign policy, believing that the Baltic republics were behaving too aggressively towards the Russian president. In response, Russia's first deputy permanent representative to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky, stated at the Security Council meeting that Estonia lacked evidence of Russian aircraft violating its airspace. Our neighbors now imagine that due to Russia, Estonian airspace was violated. There is, as always, no evidence, apart from Russophobic hysteria and, shall we say, a certain historical narrative, which the Estonian colleague vividly demonstrated to us today, he said. The diplomat clarified that on September 19th, 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets performed a routine flight from Karelia to an airfield in the Kaliningrad region, and the flight adhered strictly to international rules for airspace use. The truth, however, is not needed by Warsaw or Brussels. They only need an excuse for a new round of a certain aggressive stance. If you're constantly told from all screens that Russia is your only adversary, then you can believe anything. Thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, Kant, and other progressive minds have been replaced by figures like von der Leyen, Kallas, Johnson, and other narrow-minded individuals, Polyansky declared. Despite this fiery rhetoric, Polyansky also stated that Russia is ready for a serious conversation about European security. He said, "If you want a serious conversation about European security, about the fate of our common continent, about how to make it prosperous and safe for all, we are ready for this, and you know how to find us." This is a fascinating counterpoint to the accusations. Moving to Poland, Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced on Monday, September 22nd, that Poland will react decisively to violations of its airspace. "We will decide to take down flying objects when they violate our territory and fly over Poland. There is no doubt about that," the head of the cabinet stated at a press conference. However, Tusk added a crucial nuance, saying that in situations that are not entirely clear, such as the recent flight of Russian fighter jets over the Petro-Baltic platform, but without any violation, because these are not our territorial waters, one really needs to think twice before deciding on actions that could cause a very acute phase of the conflict. He was quoted by Reuters. Tusk also underscored that he must be 100% certain that allies would view such actions in exactly the same way. In related news, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced that border crossings between Poland and Belarus would reopen on the night of September 25th. We concluded that this preventive measure fulfilled its purpose, Tusk stated. During the 2 weeks the border was closed, more than 130 Chinese trains carrying billions of euros worth of goods accumulated on the border between Poland and Belarus, according to the Chinese publication Yikai. Regarding the recent incident involving the violation of Estonian airspace, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte stated at a press conference after an alliance meeting that NATO forces intercepted and escorted the aircraft without escalation, as no immediate threat was identified. Rutte noted that NATO will make decisions on targeting Russian aircraft based on their potential threat in real time. Decisions on the use of force against violating aircraft, including engaging them, are made in real time and are always based on available intelligence information about the level of threat posed by the aircraft, Rutte said. He emphasized, "We will not always immediately take down aircraft that invade NATO airspace. First, we will assess the situation, and if necessary, we will take action." It sounds like NATO delivered a very stern warning. Co-chair of the Alternative for Germany, AfD party, Alice Weidel sharply criticized Vladimir Putin. Weidel condemned Russia for violating NATO airspace and called on Putin for restraint, as reported by Bild newspaper. "I believe that Russia should also act de-escalatingly, not violate NATO airspace, and not test NATO air defense systems," Weidel said at a press conference in Berlin. According to Weidel, these incidents undermine the peace efforts of the US president. "One should not test Donald Trump's patience. One should also not let him lose face in his peace efforts. Russian airspace violations have the absolute potential for further escalation and will also sustainably damage relations between Russia and the US after the American president's peace initiatives," Weidel concluded. This shows a fascinating divergence of opinions within Germany itself regarding the approach to Russia and the US. In the Bundestag, during a budget discussion, German Finance Minister Christian Lindner stated that Vladimir Putin could attack NATO by 2029. Intelligence services believe that Putin could strike NATO territory no later than 2029. This does not mean that he will do it, but it means that he can. Therefore, our task is to ensure a safe life in the future in Germany and Europe as a whole. That is why we are investing heavily in our security. We have been on Ukraine's side from day one. In the 2026 budget, we guarantee that this will continue. A clear commitment we are making to Ukraine is further military and financial assistance. And we are not backing down, as we know that our freedom is also being defended in Ukraine. These expenditures are also important for Germany, the minister stated. It seems perhaps more important than the well-being of their own citizens. "The next few years will take a lot of effort from us," said the head of the Ministry of Finance and concurrently Germany's Vice-Chancellor Christian Lindner. "We see that Europe does not possess the military and diplomatic power it truly needs. We in Europe are struggling with high national debt. We are still too dependent on imports of fossil energy sources, and we are lagging in digitalization. We have technological dependence on non-EU states. It is strategically risky that we have these dependencies. We must change this," Lindner summarized. "It's a very frank assessment of Europe's vulnerabilities." Michael Espendila from the Alternative for Germany, AfD, speaking from the Bundestag podium during the discussion of the country's 2026 budget, meticulously outlined the perceived failings of Chancellor Friedrich Merz and the defense minister. He brought up multi-billion euro debts, forgotten election promises, and how Germany was left without patriot systems. What really angers people in our country is that Merz's CDU party, which promised to change everything, is participating in all this nonsense at the expense of taxpayers and is making it possible at all. Citizens did not elect a chancellor who constantly travels abroad and for whom the main issue is the continuation of the war in Ukraine. They elected an alleged economic specialist, Friedrich Merz. They elected a man who for many years engaged in heated debates and put forward the idea that a tax declaration could be filled out on a beer coaster. This promise of radical debureaucratization inspired many. It resonated right up to the 2025 election campaign. Espendila continued, "Your biggest mistake, Mr. Merz, is financing the Bundeswehr's armaments through debt." He argued that Defense Minister Pistorius, in the previous legislative period, transferred too much equipment to Ukraine that the Bundeswehr needs, and he failed to fill the resulting gaps that will cost us dearly. Espendila further asserted, even in this legislative period, Pistorius again decided to be generous and, among other things, transferred Patriot systems to Ukraine, which are now missing from our arsenal for the country's defense. After 3 years of conflict, the frighteningly empty weapons depots are not only Germany's, but also those of NATO countries and the Americans, who consider their own security more important than Europe's security. Trump knows how to strike favorable deals, and this will be at Germany's expense, Michael Espendiller concluded. This is a clear indicator of strong internal German criticism regarding defense policy and resource allocation. What do you think about these arguments? Let me know in the comments. The Chancellor Friedrich Merz's approval ratings in Germany continue to decline. He has slipped from 14th to 18th place in popularity among German politicians, according to an INSA survey commissioned by Bild newspaper. Below Merz in the rankings are only AfD co-chairman Tino Trupala and the head of the CDU-CSU parliamentary group, Thorsten Frey. The newspaper recalled that at the end of last week, the Chancellor hit a new low himself, with 62% of Germans expressing dissatisfaction with his work, according to the INSA poll. Interestingly, AfD co-chair Alice Weidel improved her position in the popularity ranking, now holding 10th place. Defense Minister Boris Pistorius continues to lead the popularity poll as before. German TV channel Welt is circulating an unfavorable story for the Chancellor. Merz was booed directly at Oktoberfest. Meanwhile, German media reacted vehemently to the Intervision 2025 contest held in Moscow. Beyond what they described as a mix of tastelessness and the Kremlin from a grandmother's tape recorder, they even detected politicization, while German journalists contend that politics plays no role in Eurovision. What else outraged them was the absence of LGBTQ+ artists at the contest. Unacceptable, they apparently thought. The end was a PR show with a party and a lot of propaganda, where the Russian soul was praised and Russia's conflict was not mentioned, wrote ZDF. As a production of the Kremlin, Intervision contradicts all the values that Eurovision represents: freedom, tolerance, and diversity, Bild stated. This contest is a relic of Soviet times that has been revived and likely serves the Kremlin to show that it is not isolated on the international stage, wrote NTV. It seems the German media's criticism of the Russian cultural event is quite strong. Now, moving to a different kind of threat, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control has issued a warning about a growing danger. Mosquito-borne viral infections are becoming a reality for Europe. Of particular concern is the chikungunya virus, carried by the Asian tiger mosquito. According to the center, by mid-August, 27 outbreaks of the disease had been recorded in Europe, setting a new record. The West Nile virus is no less dangerous. Since the beginning of the season, 335 cases of infection have been identified in 8 EU countries, 19 of which tragically resulted in loss of life. Italy has been hit hardest with 247 cases, followed by Greece with 35. Experts say the spread of these diseases is facilitated by climate shifts. Longer and warmer summers, mild winters, and new precipitation patterns create favorable conditions for insect breeding. The Asian tiger mosquito has already established itself in 16 European countries, including Germany, and continues to expand its habitat. Doctors are urging residents and tourists to exercise caution. The elderly, children, and immunocompromised patients are considered especially vulnerable. To protect oneself, it is recommended to use repellents, wear long-sleeve clothing and trousers, and install mosquito nets on windows. It's a sobering reminder that there are other serious challenges facing the continent. In Moldova, during a broadcast, the film Ivan Vasilievich Changes Profession by Guy Dai was pulled off the air due to its militarist content, citing a law prohibiting the showing of films with militaristic content from states that have not ratified the European Convention on Transfrontier Television. The measure was explained by the need to protect Moldova's national audiovisual space and ensure its information security. This is an interesting example of how cultural content can become caught up in broader political and security concerns. Let's take a brief detour into a piece of German history and industry, specifically in the city of Suhl, a beautiful city in the center of Germany, nestled in a picturesque valley. It's renowned for its rich history and serves as the unofficial capital of southern Thuringia. The first mention of Suhl dates back to 1318, when it was part of the county of Henneberg. In 1527, Count Henneberg Schleusingen officially granted Suhl city rights and status. Over the next 3 centuries, the city became part of various principalities, including Saxony-Naumburg and Saxony. During the 30 Years' War, Suhl was almost entirely devastated. The production of firearms in Suhl began as early as the 15th century, bringing significant revenue to the city. In 1751, the Sauer and Sohn arms factory was founded there. In 1815, after the Congress of Vienna, Suhl, along with several other territories of the former county of Henneberg, became part of the Kingdom of Prussia. In the 20th century, Suhl continued to be a crucial center for the production of small arms. The life of German small arms designer Hugo Schmeisser is closely linked to Suhl. The German MP-40 submachine gun, often erroneously called a Schmeisser in the USSR, is as legendary a weapon as the PPSH automatic rifle or the Mosin rifle. Thanks to Soviet cinema, the typical image of a German soldier became a young man with rolled-up sleeves, firing an MP-40 from the hip. In April 1945, the city came under the control of American forces led by General Patton. In July of the same year, in accordance with the terms of the Yalta Agreement, the city, along with all of Thuringia, came under Soviet control. In 1952, Suhl became a district center of the GDR. From 1994 to 2004, Suhl's population steadily declined. In 2024, the city council deputies of Suhl rejected a partnership with the Ukrainian city of Podilsk. The city council explained that establishing a Ukrainian partner city could jeopardize their existing partnership with the Russian city of Kaluga. This decision clearly reflects the ongoing geopolitical tensions even at a local level. And speaking of German industrial heritage, did you know about the Simson moped, the pride of the GDR? Perhaps not everyone from outside former East Germany would immediately recognize it. There's probably no one from the former GDR who hasn't ridden a Simson moped, at least as a passenger. The company was founded in 1854 by two Jewish brothers named Simson. Initially, the factory produced rifle barrels and bayonets. In 1871, Herschel Simson acquired an additional bicycle factory, and bicycles began to be produced under this brand. From 1880, they started making hunting rifles that gained worldwide fame. From 1907 to 1934, the company also produced automobiles, including racing cars. During Nazi Germany, the factory was taken from the Jewish Simson family and renamed several times. The name Simson was reintroduced as a trademark for mopeds made at the factory in the former GDR. The Schwalbe, swallow, moped model, with its riding characteristics and distinctive design, was a runaway success in the West. And in the Warsaw Pact countries, it was unmatched in popularity, and even today in Germany, it is considered a cult classic, rivaling even the Italian Vespa in popularity. These mopeds, affectionately called Zimi, were so durable that they accompanied many riders for half their lives and were then passed down to their children and grandchildren. Simson mopeds were produced in Suhl until 2002. On February 1, 2003, the Simson company was declared bankrupt and ceased to exist. In 1983, the company sold the license for Simson engines to the Riga Red Star factory for installation on Riga mopeds and later to the Lviv motorcycle plant for installation on Lviv mopeds. Also, after production ceased, the license was sold to the Molot factory in Viatskie Poliani, where it received the name VP50. A similar engine was also installed on the IZH Cornet. Currently, several 100,000 Simson mopeds are still on German roads. Simson lived and continues to live on in many ways. So, to recap today's intense discussion, Donald Trump's provocative remarks at the UN, Turkey's President Erdoğan's controversial views on the conflict and specific groups, Germany's foreign minister criticizing Israel's actions in Gaza, and the stark warning about Germany's potential complicity. We also heard about Germany's defense minister calling out Russian airspace violations and the Bundestag discussing a potential Russian attack on NATO by 2029. We looked at Germany's internal political struggles, particularly Chancellor Merz's declining popularity and sharp criticism from the AfD, and even touched upon a cultural clash over a Russian music contest. Finally, a serious warning about mosquito-borne illnesses spreading across Europe and a fascinating look at the historical industrial legacy of Suhl and the iconic Simson moped. It's clear that Europe and the global stage are facing a multitude of complex and often conflicting challenges. The world is, as always, a deeply complicated place, and staying informed is more crucial than ever. If you found this analysis insightful and thought-provoking, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more independent commentary, and consider supporting us by becoming a channel sponsor. Your help is what allows me to bring you these unvarnished truths and connect the dots in a world that often seems determined to obscure them.